When my son told me he was getting married, I smiled so big my cheeks hurt. I dreamed about that day for years, not because I was desperate to be a mother in law, but because I wanted him to have the kind of family I never really got to keep. It had just been the two of us for most of his life, me and my boy Ethan. His dad passed away when Ethan was 8. One car accident, one phone call, and suddenly everything I knew was gone. I had to figure out how to keep the lights on, keep food on the table, and keep that sweet little boy from seeing how scared I really was. Ethan was always my reason. He never made me feel like I'd failed him. Even when things were rough, he'd hug me and say, "We're going to be okay, Mom. We've got each other." That became our little motto, "We've got each other." When he graduated college, first in our family to ever do that, I cried the entire ceremony. He looked so grown up in his cap and gown, walking across that stage. Later that night, he handed me an envelope. Inside was his first paycheck from his new job. He said, "You can finally relax, Mom. I'll take care of you now." I laughed through my tears. I didn't need his money. Just hearing that was enough. So when he told me a few years later that he'd met someone special, I didn't feel jealous. I felt proud. I thought, finally, someone to love him the way I do. Her name was Madison. He met her through work. "She's amazing, Mom," he said with that same spark in his eyes I used to see when he was a kid showing me his science projects. "You'll love her. She's kind, smart, grounded." I believed him. When he brought her over for dinner the first time, I went all out. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, homemade rolls, all his favorites. I even lit candles and used the good plates I usually save for holidays. I wanted her to feel welcome, like this was already her home, too. She walked in beautiful and confident, the kind of woman who always looks put together. She brought flowers and a bottle of wine. Her smile was polite, not fake, but something about it felt practiced. Still, I tried. We talked through dinner. She complimented the food, though she didn't eat much. When Ethan helped me clear the table, she said, "You can just leave it, Ethan. I'll do it later." He laughed and said, "Nah, Mom hates dishes piling up." "Oh," she said softly. "That's different." That word stuck in my head all night. Different. They got married about 6 months later, a small ceremony in the fall. It was beautiful. I stood there in my navy blue dress, trying not to cry as Ethan said his vows. Everyone kept telling me how lucky I was. "Your son found a good one," they said. I smiled and nodded. I wanted to believe it. After the wedding, they moved in with me temporarily. Ethan said it made sense to save money before buying a house. I agreed. Honestly, I was just happy to have him home. The house felt alive again. At first, things were fine. Madison was polite. She helped a little around the house, kept to herself, worked from her laptop most days. I didn't expect her to be best friends with me overnight. I gave her space, told her to make herself at home. But little by little, I started feeling out of place in my own house. Ethan used to sit with me every morning for coffee. It was our thing, just 15 quiet minutes before he went to work. Now he said, "Madison likes to sleep in, Mom. I'll grab coffee with her later." When I'd ask if they wanted breakfast, she'd answer from the other room, "It's okay, I'll handle it." Handle it. Manage it. Those became her favorite words. She slowly took over the kitchen. First it was, "Oh, I'll cook tonight, you relax." Then it became, "Ethan and I are doing a health thing. Less oil, less salt." Eventually she told me, "You don't need to worry about meals anymore,
Like, subscribe, and share with your friends who related to it. Comment below for next story.
Mom. We've got it covered." I smiled and said, "Sure, whatever works." But that night, I sat alone at the table eating leftovers, wondering when the kitchen stopped being mine. Ethan didn't see it, or didn't want to. He was happy, and I told myself that was enough. I'd done my job as a mom. He was safe, loved, and cared for. That should have been all I needed. But love gets complicated when silence fills the spaces that used to be laughter. Madison started inviting her friends over a lot. They were all around her age, stylish, successful, always on their phones. I'd offer snacks or coffee, but she'd smile and say, "Oh, we're good, thanks." She never introduced me properly. Just a quick, "That's Ethan's mom." Not my mother-in-law. Just Ethan's mom, like I was some guest who happened to live there. I told myself to stay out of the way, respect her boundaries, let them have their life. But I couldn't ignore the ache of missing my son. He was right there, yet somehow farther away than ever. One afternoon, I was dusting his old trophies, the ones from his high school baseball days, when I found an old photo tucked behind them. It was the two of us sitting on the front porch with ice cream cones. He was maybe 10, missing a front tooth, his arm around my shoulders. On the back, in messy handwriting, it said, "Me and Mom, my favorite team." I stood there for a long time, holding that photo. Madison walked by the open door and noticed. "You're in here again?" she asked, her tone casual but sharp underneath. "I was just cleaning," I said. She glanced around. "Ethan and I are thinking of turning this room into an office. He doesn't need all this old stuff cluttering the space." "This is his old room," I said quietly. She shrugged. "It's just a room, Mom. You have to let go of some things." I didn't reply. I just nodded. But inside, I felt something crumble. Later that evening, Ethan came home smiling. "Mom, we were thinking, maybe you should visit Aunt Linda for a few weeks. You've been taking care of the house for years. You deserve a break." I laughed softly. "Are you sending me on vacation or sending me away?" He chuckled and kissed my forehead. "Come on, Mom. Don't make it sound like that." But Madison's eyes behind him told the truth. "I went to my sister's place a few towns over. She's always been good to me. Chatty, kind, a little overbearing, but she means well. I stayed for almost a month. Every day, I waited for Ethan to call and say he missed me. He called twice. Short calls, always distracted. Work's been crazy, Mom. Madison says hi. When I finally came home, it didn't feel like my home anymore. The walls had new art. My old recliner was gone. The curtains were replaced. Even the family photo that used to sit on the mantel, me holding baby Ethan, had vanished. Madison greeted me at the door, polite as ever. "Welcome back, Mom. Did you have fun?" I smiled weakly. "Yeah, it was nice." Ethan hugged me quickly, already looking at his phone. "Glad you're back." That night, I lay in bed listening to them laugh softly in the living room, their voices blending with the TV. It hit me that I wasn't part of their world anymore. I was just living in it. A few weeks later, I overheard them talking, not yelling, but their voices carried. "I told you, Ethan," Madison said. "Your mom needs to stop relying on you for everything. We need our own life." "She's my mother," he said quietly. "She's not relying on me." Madison sighed. "She is, emotionally. She doesn't even have friends here. It's not healthy for her or for us. We can't build our marriage if she's always here." I stopped breathing for a second. My heart pounded in my chest, and all I could think was, asterisk, I live here. Where else would I go, asterisk? Ethan didn't respond for a while. Then I heard him say she is Linda. She'd be fine with her. And that was it. My heart broke in silence. The next few days, I went about things as usual. Cooking small meals for myself, folding laundry, watering the plants. But everything felt heavy. Every step, every breath. Then one evening, Madison knocked softly on my door. "Mom," she said gently, "Ethan and I have been talking. We think it might be better if you stayed with Linda for a while. Maybe long term. It's just you'd have more company there, and we could visit on weekends." Her tone was careful, like she was reading from a script. I stared at her for a long moment. "When do you want me to leave?" I asked. She blinked, surprised. "Oh, whenever you're ready." But I could see the relief in her eyes. She already knew I'd say yes. Later that night, Ethan came in. He sat beside me on the bed, holding my hand like he used to when he was a boy. "Mom, please don't take this the wrong way. Madison's just trying to make sure everyone's comfortable." I smiled, or tried to. "Of course, sweetheart. Whatever makes you both happy." He hugged me and left the room, and I sat there in the quiet for a long time. Then I looked at the suitcase sitting in the corner, the same one I'd used to visit Linda. I pulled it out and started folding my clothes neatly, one by one. The sweater he bought me last Christmas, the blue scarf I wore when I dropped him off at college, the faded t-shirt I used to sleep in when he was little, because it still smelled like baby shampoo. I didn't cry that night. Sometimes sadness goes so deep that tears just stop. You sit there and realize your whole life has shifted and you didn't even notice it happening. The next morning, I packed my bags. Alone. I left early the next morning before they even woke up. The house was quiet, still half dark, just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the kitchen clock. I made one last cup of coffee and stood by the window where Ethan and I used to sit together. For a second, I imagined him walking in like old times, holding his mug, saying, "Morning, Mom." But that moment never came. I picked up my suitcase, set my cup in the sink, and walked out. I didn't leave a note. I didn't want to make it dramatic. I figured they'd realize soon enough. I was halfway down the driveway when I heard the front door open. Ethan's voice called out, "Mom, you're really leaving?" I turned. He was standing there barefoot, hair messy from sleep, holding his phone like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. "I thought this is what you both wanted," I said softly. He looked hurt, maybe confused, but not enough to stop me. He just nodded slowly. "Text me when you get there, okay?" "I will," I said, even though I never did. The drive to my sister Linda's place took about 4 hours, the whole way. I kept glancing at the passenger seat like he used to sit there. Sometimes I'd even start to say something out loud, a random thought about a song on the radio or the color of the trees, before realizing there was no one to answer. When I pulled into Linda's driveway, she was already outside waiting. She gave me one look and said, "He finally let you go, didn't he?" I smiled weakly. Something like that. Linda's house was small but warm. She lived alone too, widowed early like me, though she had 2 daughters who lived nearby. She tried her best to make me feel at home. She cleared out her guest room, cooked my favorite soup, and kept the TV running so the house never felt too quiet. The first week, I kept busy, unpacking, cleaning, helping her with groceries. Every night, I told myself Ethan would call, that he'd say, "Mom, come home." I'm sorry, but the days turned into weeks, and the phone stayed silent. When he finally did call, it was short and awkward. "Hey, Mom, you settling in okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "How's work?" "Busy. Madison's good too. She says hi. Tell her I said hello." "Yeah, I will." That was it. 5 minutes. He had to hop on a meeting. I sat there staring at my phone long after the call ended. I wasn't angry, just empty. Linda tried to cheer me up. She dragged me to her book club or out for lunch. Sometimes her daughters came by with their kids, and I'd help them bake cookies or watch cartoons. It was sweet, but every night when the house got quiet again, that emptiness crept back in. I started scrolling Reddit a lot. Funny enough, that's how I found stories that sounded just like mine. Mothers writing about sons who grew distant after marriage, daughters-in-law who saw them as burdens. It was comforting, in a sad kind of way, to know I wasn't alone. One post stuck with me. A woman wrote, "You can't compete with the life they're building. You're just a chapter they already finished reading." That line hit me hard. Maybe that was the truth I'd been avoiding all along. Ethan wasn't choosing Madison over me. He was choosing the life he was supposed to build. I just wasn't part of that story anymore. Still, knowing something and accepting it are two very different things. One night, I dreamed about Ethan as a little boy again. He was running through the park, calling for me, his tiny hand waving in the air. I woke up crying. It was the first time I'd cried since leaving. The next morning, Linda noticed my red eyes. "You miss him," she said gently. "I do," I whispered. "But I think he's already moved on." She reached across the table and held my hand. "Kids do that, honey. It doesn't mean they stopped loving you. It just means they don't need you the same way anymore." I nodded, even though the words didn't make it hurt less. Weeks turned into months. Ethan called once a month, sometimes less. Always quick check-ins. "How are you, Mom?" "Everything okay? We're thinking of taking a trip next month." I told him I was fine every single time, even when I wasn't. I started walking in the mornings, just around the block at first, then down to the park. There was a bench near the pond where an older man fed ducks every day. One morning, I sat beside him. He nodded politely, then said, "You look like someone who carries a lot in her heart." I laughed softly. "Don't we all?" He smiled. "I used to. Then I learned that sometimes love means letting people forget you for a while." I didn't know what he meant then. I think I do now. It was around Christmas when Ethan called again. His voice sounded rushed. Hey, Mom. Merry Christmas. Madison and I are flying out to Colorado for the holidays. I just wanted to check in. I smiled, though my chest ached. That's wonderful. You two enjoy yourselves. You're not mad, he asked carefully. Why would I be? He hesitated. I know we haven't seen each other much. It's okay, sweetheart. You're building your life. That's what you're supposed to do. There was silence for a moment. Then he said, I love you, Mom. I love you too, Ethan. After the call ended, I stared at the little fake Christmas tree Linda had set up in the corner. I realized I didn't feel angry anymore, just tired, maybe even peaceful. In January, I decided to volunteer at the local library. I started shelving books, helping with children's reading sessions. The first day, a little boy about 7 came up to me with a picture book. Can you read it for me? He asked. I smiled and said yes. He leaned against my arm while I read, completely absorbed in the story. When he laughed, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Warmth that didn't hurt. That night, I wrote Ethan an email. I didn't expect a reply. I just wanted to tell him what I'd learned. Hi, sweetheart. I hope you and Madison are doing well. I've started volunteering at the library. It's funny how children's laughter can fill empty spaces you didn't even realize were still hollow. I miss you, but I'm learning to be happy in other ways. Don't feel guilty. You've given me more love than I ever thought I'd have in this life. Be kind to her. Build your life. That's all a mother ever wants. I never hit send. I saved it as a draft and read it from time to time when I missed him. Spring came. The air got warmer. The flowers bloomed. I started spending more time in the garden behind Linda's house. She joked that I was becoming the tomato queen. One afternoon, I was trimming the rose bushes when I heard the crunch of gravel behind me. I turned around, and there he was, Ethan. He looked thinner, older somehow, but his eyes, those same soft brown eyes, were the same. Mom, he said quietly. I froze. Ethan? What are you doing here? I needed to see you. He stepped forward and pulled me into a hug. I stood stiff for a moment before my arms finally wrapped around him. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed the smell of his cologne, the feel of his arms around me. When he finally let go, I asked, Is everything okay? How's Madison? He hesitated. She's fine. We've had some stuff to figure out. But I realized I hadn't really been there for you. I smiled gently. You don't need to feel bad, Ethan. You have your own life. He shook his head. That's not an excuse. I should have handled things differently. I didn't know how to balance it all. That's marriage, I said softly. You'll learn. He sat down on the porch step and rubbed his face. She said something the other night that really got to me. She said, You're still your mother's son more than you're my husband. And for the first time, I realized how unfair I'd been to both of you. I sat beside him quietly. The air smelled like grass and rain. I don't want you to feel like you lost me, he said finally. I didn't lose you, sweetheart. I just had to learn to let you go a little. He looked down, eyes glistening. I miss you, Mom. I miss you too. We sat there for a long time without saying much. Sometimes silence can heal things words can't. Before he left that evening, he said, Madison wants to apologize. She didn't mean to push you out like that. We were just trying to figure out how to be a couple. I nodded. I understand. It's not easy for her either. He smiled. Can we visit next weekend? Maybe have dinner together. Of course, I said. You know I'll always have a place at the table for you. That weekend came, and they actually showed up. Madison brought flowers. She hugged me, not the polite kind, but a real hug. For the first time, I saw her not as the woman who took my son away, but as the woman who loved him in her own way. We ate, laughed a little, talked about simple things. Nothing deep, nothing heavy, but it felt good, normal. Like maybe we'd all grown up a little. When they left that night, Ethan kissed my forehead. I love you, Mom. Thank you for everything. After they drove away, I sat on the porch, watching the tail lights disappear down the road. I realized then that love doesn't always stay in the same shape it started. Sometimes it changes, stretches, moves into new places. And that's okay. I went back inside, poured myself some tea, and sat by the window again, this time without the ache. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I'd lost my son. I just felt like he'd grown up. And maybe, finally, I had too. A week after that dinner, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the window and birds chirping outside. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up with that heavy, hollow feeling in my chest. It felt lighter, like the air had changed somehow. Linda noticed it too. She said, "You've got color in your cheeks again." I laughed. Maybe I finally ran out of sadness. She smiled knowingly. Or maybe you just started living again. I spent the next few weeks feeling more like myself than I had in a long time. Ethan and Madison started calling regularly, not out of guilt, but naturally. Sometimes just to share little things, like a recipe Ethan tried, or a new cafe they found. One evening, they even FaceTimed me from a concert. Ethan said, "Look, Mom, it's your favorite band." I laughed watching him sing off key into the camera, just like he did when he was a kid in the car. That small, silly moment meant more to me than all the grand apologies in the world. It was proof that our bond hadn't disappeared. It had just changed shape. A few months later, Ethan called sounding nervous. "Mom, can we come by this weekend? There's something we want to tell you." I said, of course, though my heart started racing a little. When they arrived, Madison was glowing. She handed me a small white envelope. Inside was a sonogram. My hand started trembling. "You're having a baby?" She nodded, smiling through tears. "You're going to be a grandma." I can't even describe that moment. I felt like the world stopped spinning for a second, just long enough for my heart to fill up completely. I hugged them both, holding on tight. "I'm so proud of you," I whispered. So proud. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just lay there thinking about how life had turned out, how something that once felt broken beyond repair had found its way back to peace. Over the next several months, I was part of everything. Madison texted me ultrasound photos, baby name ideas, and even nursery color swatches. She'd ask, "Do you think Ethan will be a good dad?" And I'd always say he already is. We started rebuilding, quietly and without forcing anything. One afternoon, she called me out of the blue. "Would you want to come with me to a prenatal class?" I almost cried. "I'd love to." When I got there, she introduced me to everyone as my mother-in-law. But honestly, she's like a second mom. It was such a simple sentence, but it made something deep inside me heal. A few months later, when the baby shower came, I sat at the table surrounded by laughter, gifts, and pastel balloons. People took turns telling stories about Ethan and Madison, and when it was my turn, I stood up holding my glass. I just want to say, I began, that family isn't about who gets it right all the time. It's about who chooses to stay, even when it hurts, even when it's messy. And I'm so grateful to still be here, to see this next chapter. Madison hugged me after that, whispering, "Thank you for giving us another chance." When baby Lucy was born, I drove to the hospital the next morning. I still remember the smell, clean sheets, soft beeping machines, and that quiet hum that always exists in hospital hallways. Ethan met me in the corridor, beaming like a little boy again. "She's perfect, Mom," he said, voice shaking. When I held her, I couldn't stop crying. Her tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and I thought, this is what forgiveness feels like. From that moment, Lucy became my whole world. Every week I'd visit, bringing home-cooked meals and helping around the house. Madison was grateful, sometimes even emotional. "I don't know what we'd do without you," she'd say. It was strange, the way life had looped back around. The same woman who once made me feel unwanted now trusted me to hold her daughter while she slept. Ethan once joked, "I think Lucy likes you more than she likes us." I smiled. Grandmas are allowed to spoil. Time went by so fast. Lucy turned 1, then 2. She called me Nana, her little voice soft and sweet. There were still moments, of course, when the past tried to whisper back. Like one Thanksgiving when Ethan had to leave early for a work trip and Madison looked tired. I offered to stay the night and help. She hesitated for a second before nodding. That tiny pause reminded me that trust, once cracked, takes time to rebuild completely. But we were getting there. One evening, after Lucy fell asleep, Madison and I sat in the quiet living room sipping tea. She looked at me and said, "You know, I used to think you were judging me, that I could never be good enough in your eyes." I looked down at my cup, and I used to think you wanted to erase me. I guess we both saw what we feared. She nodded. I was young and insecure. I didn't realize how much Ethan needed both of us in different ways. I smiled softly. We all learn the hard way. She reached over and touched my hand. "Thank you for forgiving me." I squeezed her fingers. "Thank you for loving him." That simple exchange erased years of misunderstanding more than any long conversation ever could. Life settled into a rhythm after that. Sunday dinners, birthday parties, Christmas mornings. Sometimes I'd look around the room at Ethan laughing, Madison setting the table, Lucy chasing bubbles across the floor. And I'd think, this is what peace looks like. Years went by and Lucy started kindergarten. I watched her run toward the school doors, her little backpack bouncing. Ethan turned to me and said, "Remember when I was that small?" "I remember when you were smaller," I said, smiling. He laughed, then slipped his arm around my shoulders. "You've always been there for me, Mom, even when I didn't deserve it." I looked up at him and said, "That's what mothers do. We love through the cracks." He nodded quietly. "I hope Lucy loves Madison the way I love you." That made me tear up, because I knew deep down that he finally understood. The following year, Linda passed away peacefully in her sleep. Losing her was hard. She'd been my anchor through the storm. At her funeral, Ethan held my hand the whole time. Madison took care of the arrangements, and Lucy drew a picture of Aunt Linda with angel wings. That night, back home, I sat by the window again, the same way I had years ago when I first left Ethan's house. Only this time, it wasn't loneliness I felt. It was gratitude. I whispered, "Thank you, Linda. You helped me find my way home." After that, I started writing. Small reflections, memories, lessons learned. It wasn't meant for anyone, really, just my way of making sense of the years. But one day, Lucy found one of my notebooks. She was about 9 by then. "Nana," she said, "you should post these stories online. They sound like the ones Daddy reads on Reddit." I laughed. "Reddit, huh? Maybe one day." She grinned. "You'll get lots of hearts and upvotes." So I did. I started posting little pieces of my story, not to complain, not to blame, but to show how love can bend without breaking. To remind others that letting go doesn't mean giving up. To my surprise, people read them. Hundreds of strangers left comments saying things like, "This reminded me of my mom," or "I wish I could fix things like you did." Some even called me Internet Mom. It felt strange but comforting, like the pain I'd carried had finally found a purpose. Ethan found out one day and called me, laughing. "So you're famous now?" "Hardly," I said. "Just an old lady with too many feelings and a Wi-Fi connection." He chuckled. "Well, keep writing, Mom. You have no idea how many people need to hear what you've lived through." And maybe he was right, because the more I wrote, the more I healed. Years later, when Lucy graduated high school, she gave a little speech at her party. She said, "My Nana taught me that love isn't about holding on tight. It's about knowing when to open your hands." I don't think I've ever been prouder. After the party, she came and sat next to me on the porch steps, the same steps where Ethan once told me he missed me. She looked at me with that same softness in her eyes and said, "Nana, do you ever regret anything?" I thought about it for a moment. Maybe a few words I should have said sooner. A few things I should have let go faster. But regret doesn't live here anymore, sweetheart. Only peace. She smiled. "I want to love people the way you do." I brushed her hair back gently. "Just remember, love isn't always easy, but it's always worth trying again." The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Ethan and Madison were laughing somewhere inside, the sound of clinking glasses echoing through the open door. I looked at them and thought, this is what all those tears were for. Not for the pain of being left behind, but for the beauty of being found again. I don't know what tomorrow holds. None of us do. But I've learned that even when life feels like it's breaking you apart, sometimes it's just rearranging you for something better. If I could speak to that woman who packed her bags alone all those years ago, I'd tell her this: you're not being abandoned. You're just being set free. so love can come back to you in a different form. And it did. In every phone call, every laugh, every small moment of forgiveness. Because love never really leaves. It just finds new ways to return home. Years passed faster than I ever expected. Seasons came and went, birthdays, anniversaries, holidays that blurred together like soft brushstrokes on a long canvas. Ethan and Madison grew older, their faces a little wiser, their laughter a little slower. Lucy went off to college, full of dreams and independence. And me, I grew quieter. Not sad, just peaceful, like the ocean after a storm. I'd sit on the porch most mornings, a blanket over my knees and a cup of coffee warming my hands. The same porch where I'd once cried and laughed and forgiven. The same house that had witnessed all the seasons of my heart. Sometimes I'd hear Lucy's voice on the phone, calling to check in, asking about recipes, talking about her new life in the city. I loved listening to her stories. It was like hearing the echoes of my own youth, only freer. One afternoon, she called and said, "Nana, I'm coming to visit next weekend. Don't plan anything. I just want to be with you." I smiled. You know me, I'll plan anyway. She laughed. I know. When she arrived, she looked so grown up, confident, glowing, but still with that same kindness in her eyes. She hugged me tight, like she used to when she was little. We spent the weekend cooking, talking, reminiscing. On Saturday night, she found one of my old notebooks, the ones I used to write in after Linda passed away. She flipped through the pages slowly. "You've written so much, Nana. These are beautiful." I shrugged. Just thoughts. Things I never wanted to forget. She smiled. "You know, you should publish them someday." I laughed softly. Who'd want to read an old woman's ramblings? I would, she said. And so would a lot of people. That night, after she went to bed, I sat by the window again. The moonlight was spilling across the floor, quiet and silver. I looked at those notebooks stacked on my desk, full of scribbles, tear stains, and small pieces of my life, and I thought, maybe she's right. The next morning, over breakfast, Lucy said, "Do you ever think about going back to the house where you and Dad used to live?" I took a slow sip of coffee. Sometimes, but I think I already said goodbye to that part of me. She nodded. I drove by once. It looks different now, but the tree you planted is still there. That made me smile. That tree had better outlive all of us. After Lucy left, I walked out to my garden, smaller now but still blooming. The roses I'd planted years ago were thriving, their petals soft and full. I touched one gently and whispered, "You made it." In a way, I felt the same. A few months later, Ethan called. His voice was quieter than usual. "Mom, Madison's not feeling too well lately. The doctors are running tests." My heart sank. "What's going on?" "They're not sure yet. She's been really tired." I told him to keep me posted, and I prayed every night. Weeks passed. Then one evening, he called again, voice breaking. "It's cancer, Mom." I sat in silence, the world around me blurring. "Oh, Ethan," he whispered, she's scared. "We all are." I didn't hesitate. "I'll be there tomorrow." When I arrived, Madison was sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, pale but still smiling. "I told Ethan not to call you," she said softly. I shook my head. "You don't get to make that rule anymore." She laughed weakly. "Fair enough." Over the next year, I became part of their lives again. Not out of duty, but out of love. I helped with meals, appointments, little things. Lucy came home often too, helping however she could. Some nights, Madison and I would sit quietly while everyone else slept. She'd talk about her fears, her regrets, her hopes. One night she said, "You know, I used to think you hated me." "I never hated you," I said softly. "I just didn't know how to stop missing my son." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "You were right to feel that way. I took him away too soon." I reached over and took her hand. "You gave him love. That's never wrong." She squeezed my fingers. "Thank you for forgiving me." We both sat there, two women who'd hurt each other and healed together. Madison fought bravely for 2 years. She passed away one spring morning, with Ethan by her side and Lucy holding her hand. At her funeral, Ethan gave a speech that broke everyone's heart. He said, "My mother taught me love's strength. My wife showed me its courage." And together, they taught me that family isn't perfect, it's just forever. I stood there listening, tears streaming down my face. Afterward, he came to me and said, Mom, I don't think I could have done this without you. I hugged him tightly. You were never alone, sweetheart. You just had to remember. Life slowed down after that. Ethan eventually sold the big house and moved to a smaller one. Lucy finished college and started working as a social worker. I want to help people who feel lost, she told me once. Like you did, Nana. I told her, then you'll do just fine. Years rolled on quietly. My hands grew weaker, my steps slower. But my heart somehow only grew stronger. I'd spend afternoons on the porch, reading Lucy's letters or rereading the old posts I'd written online. Sometimes I'd scroll through the comments. People still left messages. You remind me of my mom. I wish I could tell her I'm sorry. Thank you for this story. And every time I read those, I whispered, you still can. Because forgiveness doesn't need a perfect moment. It just needs a willing heart. One winter evening, Lucy came to visit again. She was in her late 20s now, beautiful, wise, kind. She brought her boyfriend, a gentle man named Chris. They sat by the fire while I made cocoa. After dinner, Lucy looked at me and said, Nana, there's something I want to tell you. I smiled. You're getting married, aren't you? Her eyes widened. How did you know? A mother's intuition, I said, laughing softly. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I want you to walk me down the aisle. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Me? Of course, she said. You've been my guide, my family, my heart. I want everyone to see the woman who taught me what love really means. That moment felt like the universe closing its loop. Every tear, every ache, every long night of prayer finding its answer in that one sentence. The wedding was small and beautiful. As I walked her down the aisle, the sunlight hit her face just right, and I thought of Ethan's wedding all those years ago. How I'd sat in silence, holding my pain. This time I walked with pride, with peace. Ethan stood at the altar waiting to give her away. He looked at me, eyes full of emotion, and mouthed, "Thank you." After the ceremony, during the reception, he came over and hugged me tightly. "Mom," he whispered, "you've given me everything, even when I didn't deserve it." I smiled through tears. You deserved it more than you'll ever know. Later that night, as the party lights faded and everyone danced, I sat outside for a moment. The air cool, the music faint. I looked up at the stars and whispered, "We made it." Because somehow through all the heartbreak, love had found its way home again. A few years later, Lucy had a daughter. She named her Grace. When she told me, I asked, "Why Grace?" She smiled softly. "Because you always said life is about giving grace to others and to yourself." Holding baby Grace in my arms, I felt something deep inside settle completely. Like every wound had finally closed. Now, as I write this, I'm an old woman sitting by that same window, the one that's seen me through it all. The garden outside is smaller now, but the roses still bloom faithfully every spring. Ethan calls every day. Lucy visits every week. Grace runs around the house like a little whirlwind, her laughter filling every corner. Sometimes when the house is quiet, I close my eyes and think back to that day, the day I packed my bags alone, thinking my life was over. If only I could go back and hold that younger version of me. I'd tell her, "You're going to be okay. You'll cry, yes. You'll hurt. But one day you'll understand this isn't the end. It's the beginning of a softer kind of love." Because I did learn that love doesn't vanish just because it changes shape. It grows, it matures, it forgives. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt forgotten by someone you love, please remember this. Sometimes the distance isn't a punishment. It's a lesson, a quiet space where both hearts can grow before finding their way back. I thought losing Ethan would destroy me. Instead, it transformed me. It taught me patience, compassion, grace. And in return, life gave me everything back. Not the way I expected, but better. Now, when Grace crawls into my lap and asks, "Nana, were you ever sad?" I smile and say, "Yes, sweetheart." But I learned that sadness can bloom into love if you let it. She usually giggles and hugs me tighter, as if her little arms could hold the world together. And maybe in some small way they do. As the sun sets outside my window, I sip my tea and feel nothing but gratitude. The house smells of lavender and old books. Ethan's voice is on the phone. Lucy's laughter echoes down the hall, and little Grace is singing to her dolls. This quiet, gentle peace is everything I ever wanted. And maybe, after all those years of pain and waiting, it's true what they say. Love doesn't leave. It just learns to come home in different ways. When people ask me what heartbreak feels like, I tell them it isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, like the sound of a suitcase zipper closing for the last time. I'm Linda. I'm 62 years old, and I never thought I'd spend my later years packing my bags alone. Not after all I gave to raise my son, Michael. He was everything to me. After his father died when Michael was just 7, I promised myself I'd give him both love and stability. I worked 2 jobs, saved every dollar, skipped vacations, and even sold my jewelry to put him through college. Every choice I made had him in it somehow. When he met Emily, his future wife, I was happy for him. She was polite, warm, and smart, the kind of woman any mother would want for her son. We started off well. I cooked for them, we went shopping together, and I helped her move into their first apartment. But over time, small cracks appeared. She started suggesting things like, maybe your mom should move closer to her friends, or it's hard to have privacy with someone always around. At first, I brushed it off. I thought she was just adjusting to marriage. I told myself not to be sensitive, not to become that mother-in-law. So I kept my distance. I stopped dropping by unannounced. I waited for invitations that rarely came. One Thanksgiving, I cooked a full dinner, turkey, stuffing, pie, everything. I waited all afternoon for them to arrive, but they never showed up. My phone finally buzzed around 8 p.m. It was a text from Michael, sorry mom. Emily's not feeling well. We'll come next weekend. That weekend never came. I didn't want to admit how much it hurt. I kept telling myself he was busy. I reminded myself he had a new life, a wife, maybe even plans for kids. But deep down, I felt I was being slowly replaced. Months later, Michael called out of the blue. His voice sounded nervous. Mom, he said, Emily and I talked, and we think it's best if you sell the house and move into a smaller place. Maybe closer to Aunt Carol? I felt my chest tighten. That house wasn't just bricks and wood. It was our life. The place where Michael took his first steps, where his father's picture still hung in the hallway, where every corner held a memory. I didn't argue. I just said, if that's what you think is best, honey. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for hours. I looked around at everything I'd built, the curtains I sewed myself, the framed drawings from Michael's childhood, the tiny dents in the wall from when he played with his toy cars. It all felt like a museum of a life no one remembered anymore. A few weeks later, I started packing. Slowly, quietly, one box at a time. The smell of cardboard filled the house. I wrapped picture frames in newspaper, folded clothes that still carried traces of detergent and time, and put away the dishes I'd once used for our family dinners. Michael came by once to help, or maybe to make sure I was actually leaving. Emily stayed in the car. He tried to sound casual. You'll love the new place, Mom. It'll be easier for you. I smiled, but inside, something broke. Don't worry about me, sweetheart, I said. I'll be fine. When he hugged me goodbye, it felt quick, polite, almost like a handshake. I watched him drive away, his car disappearing down the street I once watched him ride his bike on. That night, I sat in the empty living room. The walls echoed. I whispered to myself, you did good, Linda. You raised a man who's strong enough to choose his life. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to feel proud instead of abandoned. The next morning, I zipped up the last suitcase. I didn't cry. I just looked around one last time and said quietly, thank you for the memories. Then I walked out and locked the door behind me. I moved into a small apartment near the coast. It's quiet here. You can hear the waves from the window. For a while, I stayed busy rearranging furniture, watering plants, pretending I liked the silence. Then one evening, as the sun was setting, Michael called. His voice cracked a little. Mom, he said, Emily and I are having some issues. I miss you. I didn't know what to say. My heart wanted to rush to him, but another part of me knew I couldn't keep rescuing him. I'll always love you, Michael, I said softly. But maybe now's your turn to find your own way. There was silence on the line. Then he whispered, I'm sorry. And that was enough. I realized forgiveness isn't about pretending the pain never happened. It's about deciding not to live inside it anymore. Now, when I look at old pictures, I don't cry. I smile, because even though life took a turn I never expected, I'm still standing. I learned that sometimes love means letting go, not out of anger, but out of peace. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt forgotten, I want you to know this: you're not alone. The people we love may outgrow our arms, but never our hearts. And when the day comes that you have to pack your bags and walk away, do it with grace. Not because they were right to hurt you, but because you deserve peace more than you deserve proof. So, yes, I packed my bags alone the day my only son chose her over me forever. But I also found myself again. And maybe, just maybe, that was the family I needed to return to all along.
Like, subscribe, and share with your friends who related to it, and comment below for next story.